In a world where alliances were once thought to be immutable, a singular force emerged to challenge the status quo, a force personified by a figure whose very name sent ripples through the corridors of power. Donald Trump's tenure in the White House was defined by its unpredictability and unapologetic disruption. As he took to the global stage, his bold rhetoric and demands for increased defense spending among NATO allies became more than just political maneuvers. They became the catalyst for a significant shift in transatlantic security dynamics. It was a crisp autumn morning in Brussels when diplomats gathered at a high-stakes meeting, their faces etched with a mixture of concern and determination. In the glow of the city's historic buildings, whispers about Trump's latest ultimatum were the subject of heated debate. "We need to spend more," insisted one delegate, echoing the Trump doctrine that every ally must shoulder a fair share of the burden. The call was clear. No longer would European nations be allowed to rely on American military might without investing in their own capabilities. At the heart of the controversy was a man whose larger-than-life persona both intimidated and inspired. Trump's forceful insistence that NATO allies must boost their defense budgets stirred a complex mix of resentment and reluctant acceptance. His tweets, often more incendiary than official statements, had cut through diplomatic niceties and reached the ears of defense ministers, igniting a debate that transcended party lines and national borders. For many in Europe, Trump's approach was a wake-up call, a reminder that the era of unconditional American support was giving way to an age of shared responsibility. In cities like Berlin, Paris, and London, discussions erupted in parliament halls and coffee shops alike. Some saw the demands as a necessary correction to decades of imbalanced spending, while others regarded them as an unwelcome imposition of American ideology. Regardless, one thing was clear: the old rules were changing. Amid the bustling backdrop of European capitals, a young analyst named Clara found herself drawn into the vortex of this emerging debate. Fresh out of graduate school, Clara was known for her keen insight into international relations and her ability to distill complex policies into narratives that resonated with a broad audience. She began to document the unfolding drama, interviewing defense experts, NATO officials, and even skeptics of Trump's approach. With her notepad in hand, she traversed the continent, driven by the belief that history was being written before her eyes. Clara's journey took her to a remote town in Eastern Europe, where local leaders had long grappled with the realities of post-Cold War security. Here, the impact of Trump's rhetoric was palpable. The mayor of the town, a pragmatic leader with a deep-rooted sense of community, explained how the renewed focus on defense spending had led to infrastructural improvements, modernized equipment, and a bolstered sense of self-reliance among European nations. "For too long, we have waited for external saviors," he remarked, "and now we are compelled to take our destiny into our own hands." Back in the halls of NATO headquarters in Brussels, the debate intensified. Senior officials who had weathered decades of diplomatic negotiations found themselves having to justify their long-held practices in the face of unprecedented external pressure. In a tense meeting illuminated by the glow of computer screens and the murmur of urgent conversations, one veteran diplomat remarked, "Trump's methods may be unorthodox, but they have awakened a sense of urgency among our members. It is as if we have been sleeping, and now the alarm is ringing." His words encapsulated the paradox of the moment, a mixture of exasperation and optimism that something new might emerge from the turmoil. As the months wore on, the pressure exerted by Trump's policies began to bear fruit. Defense ministers across NATO member states slowly began to revise their budgets, redirecting funds toward modernization programs and strategic infrastructure projects. In nations where public spending had once been a contentious issue, there was now an emerging consensus. National security was too important to leave solely in the hands of a distant ally. In a move that surprised many, even those who had vocally opposed Trump's rhetoric started to see the merit in a more balanced partnership, where every member contributed not just in words, but in resources. Yet, not all were convinced. Critics argued that the unilateral nature of Trump's demands threatened to fracture an alliance built on mutual trust. Some feared that the growing focus on national contributions might lead to a splintering of the very fabric that held NATO together. Political debates turned fierce in parliaments, with leaders warning of a potential slide toward isolationism if the emphasis on financial contributions overshadowed the core principles of collective defense. Still, for every skeptic, there was an ardent supporter who saw in this disruption an opportunity for genuine reform, a chance to recalibrate the balance of power and responsibility among nations. In this charged atmosphere, Clara continued her work, documenting not just the political debates but the human stories behind them. She met veterans who recalled a time when alliances were taken for granted and younger soldiers who now felt a renewed sense of duty to their countries. In one memorable conversation with a retired officer, she heard him say, "It's not about defiance, it's about survival. When one of us stands up, we all do. And that is what makes NATO strong." His words resonated deeply with Clara, encapsulating the complex interplay between national pride and collective security. As autumn gave way to winter, the transformation was undeniable. The seeds sown by Trump's bold assertions had grown into a robust movement for greater self-reliance and responsibility within NATO. Yet, the story was far from over. The growing consensus on increased funding and strategic autonomy was only the beginning of a larger narrative, a narrative that would shape the future of transatlantic relations for decades to come. With the stage set and alliances redefined, the world watched as the interplay of power, ideology, and national interest moved into a new phase. The legacy of Trump's leadership, with all its controversies and contradictions, had ignited a debate that was reshaping global security. And as Clara's notes filled with the voices of those living through this transformation, she knew that the coming chapters would be just as riveting as nations continued to navigate the delicate balance between independence and interdependence. The winter months had deepened the resolve of NATO members, and by the time spring emerged, a tangible shift in transatlantic defense policy was evident. In the aftermath of Trump's disruptive tenure, the alliance had been forced to confront its long-standing disparities. The growing emphasis on national contributions wasn't just a temporary reaction. It had become the foundation of a reimagined security framework that balanced American might with European determination. In a small conference room in Strasbourg, a gathering of defense strategists and policymakers convened to discuss what many were calling the New Dawn. At the head of the table sat a charismatic leader known only as Mr. Laurent, a seasoned diplomat with decades of experience. With measured calm, he recounted how the pressures of the previous years had forced NATO to rethink its financial and strategic structure. "We have learned that strength is not measured solely by the power of one nation," he declared. "It is the sum of our collective resolve, our shared investment in the future." As discussions unfolded, it became clear that the shift was more than just a change in budget lines, it was a transformation in mindset. Across Europe, government offices were buzzing with plans to modernize defense systems, invest in cybersecurity, and develop rapid response capabilities. The collective urgency to reduce dependency on external power had become a rallying cry. In boardrooms and military academies alike, debates now centered on how best to build a resilient infrastructure that could stand up to the challenges of an ever-changing global landscape. Clara, whose journey had taken her deep into the heart of these developments, continued to follow the evolving story. In one memorable interview with a NATO official from Italy, she learned how the funding increase was sparking innovation. "For the first time in decades, we are rethinking how we approach defense," the official explained. "It's not merely about throwing money at the problem. It's about strategic investment in technology, training, and partnerships that can deliver real, measurable outcomes." His remarks captured the essence of a new era, pragmatic reform inspired by necessity. Yet the road ahead was not without its obstacles. As national budgets were reallocated and military programs overhauled, political rivalries and bureaucratic inertia threatened to slow progress. In a turbulent session of a European Parliament, heated debates erupted over the distribution of funds. Some lawmakers argued that the rapid shifts in policy were undermining the very stability they sought to create. "We must ensure that our drive for autonomy does not lead us down the path of fragmentation," one vocal critic warned, echoing the concerns of those who feared that a focus on individual gains might erode collective solidarity. Despite these challenges, momentum was building. The new funding paradigm was beginning to bear fruit in unexpected ways. In a forward-thinking defense lab in Sweden, engineers were working on next-generation systems that promised to revolutionize battlefield communication. In another corner of Europe, joint military exercises were evolving from routine drills into sophisticated simulations of modern, hybrid warfare. The narrative of NATO was transforming from one of dependency to one of innovation and self-determination. During this period of rapid change, stories of personal triumph emerged as symbols of the broader shift. One such tale was that of Captain Elena, a young officer from Spain who had risen quickly through the ranks thanks to the new focus on comprehensive training and technological adaptation. In an interview that was later broadcast across the alliance, Captain Elena recounted how enhanced funding had not only modernized equipment, but also rekindled a sense of pride and purpose among her peers. "We are no longer waiting for someone else to lead the charge," she said. "We are taking our destiny into our own hands, and that gives us the strength to face whatever challenges come our way." As NATO's transformation continued to unfold, the alliance began to project a more balanced image on the world stage. The renewed emphasis on self-reliance did not diminish the bonds that had long united the transatlantic community. Rather, it reinforced them by establishing a more equitable system of shared responsibility. In diplomatic circles, there was a growing recognition that the disruptions of the past had forced necessary change. The narrative had shifted from blame to opportunity, a chance to forge a future where every member played a vital role in ensuring mutual security. In quiet moments of reflection, even those who had once been staunch critics of Trump's methods admitted that his confrontational style had achieved something unexpected. His insistence on financial parity had shaken the foundations of complacency, forcing allies to confront hard truths and embrace reforms that had long been overdue. While the memories of his polarizing presidency lingered, they were now intertwined with a legacy of transformation that resonated with hope and renewal. As spring gave way to the promise of summer, NATO emerged from a period of introspection and turbulence with a newfound resilience. The story of increased funding and the shift toward greater national accountability had evolved into a broader tale of reinvention, a narrative that balanced pragmatism with idealism, challenge with opportunity. In the corridors of power, amid the echoes of past controversies and the anticipation of future triumphs, the alliance was writing a new chapter, one defined by collaboration, innovation, and a shared determination to secure peace in an unpredictable world. Clara's final reflections captured the essence of this evolving story. In her meticulously kept journal, she wrote, "History is not simply made by leaders, it is forged by the collective actions of countless individuals." Trump's leadership may have been controversial, but in its wake, it has spurred a critical evolution within NATO, one that reminds us that true strength lies in unity, self-reliance, and the courage to embrace change. And as the summer sun shone over Europe, the alliance moved forward, forever altered by the forces that had once threatened to divide it, now united in the pursuit of a secure and prosperous future. Amid a shifting geopolitical landscape, NATO emerged not merely as a military alliance, but as a reimagined coalition built on shared purpose and mutual accountability. The disruptive force of Trump's unorthodox leadership had rippled across the Atlantic, provoking heated debates and spurring transformative change among European allies. No longer content with symbolic support, nations had embraced their own roles in securing a safer future, modernizing defense capabilities, investing in new technologies, and reinforcing strategic autonomy. At the core of this evolution was a renewed spirit of self-reliance, as leaders who once balked at contentious demands now recognized the importance of a balanced approach. National initiatives dovetailed with long-standing alliances to create a model where every member contributed to a robust, forward-thinking defense posture. Joint military exercises, collaborative research projects, and shared strategic planning replaced the era of unilateral dependency. In boardrooms, parliaments, and military academies alike, the old complacency gave way to an invigorated commitment to collective security. Public opinion, too, shifted as citizens witnessed tangible improvements in national defense and infrastructure. Budgetary reforms and technological innovation fostered a sense of pride and empowerment, transforming skepticism into cautious optimism. Communities, once resigned to relying on distant allies, now actively supported investments in their own security, laying the groundwork for a more resilient future. In this new era, the transatlantic community stood united, a testament to the idea that even polarizing leadership can spark profound progress. The narrative of NATO funding growth, ignited by controversy and tempered by pragmatic collaboration, evolved into a story of resilience and shared destiny. As the alliance looked toward an uncertain future, its renewed strength offered hope, a future where the commitment to mutual defense and the spirit of collaboration would ensure lasting peace and stability for generations to come.